After a number of UK officials, even Prince Charles, were diagnosed positive with coronavirus, last night the House of Commons shuttered its doors and Parliament has shut down. This as the people of the UK are left to sort things out for themselves amid this pandemic. Meanwhile, at Belmarsh Prison, a frail Julian Assange sits in his jail cell after bail for the WikiLeaks co-founder was denied. For more on this, we will go to former UK MP George Galloway. George, let's start with Parliament going dark for the next month. Before MPs decided to pack it up, did they pass any sort of bills to help the people who will suffer from the fallout of this virus shutdown?
Well, no bills required under our system. The government has the power to make these orders, and they have. They, first of all, injected £330 billion into the British economy, mainly through state-backed loans rather than hard cash. Then they dealt with the self-employed belatedly today, and in a very controversial way. There'll be a lot more trouble still to come. Turns out there's 4.5–5 million people in Britain who are self-employed, and they were the last to be dealt with. But the state is paying 80% of waged workers' wages for the foreseeable future. And it has, of course, ordered the shutdown of all non-essential economic activity, only pharmacies and food shops. So really quite a tectonic shift in the British economy, and we'll have to see how it all works out. Who's going to pay, of course, in the long run will be the $64,000 question. But they've printed the money. Just goes to show there was a money tree, a magic money tree all along.
That's right.
It's called the printers in the bunkers of the Bank of England.
Well, George, isn't that why people say all money nowadays is fiat? Doesn't matter, just make more.
Exactly. Well, I mean, though, it'll be hard for people to argue against that in the future. We need more health service workers. We need better equipment, more intensive care beds, more ventilators. What do you mean you don't have the money? You had the money in 2008 for the bankers. You had the money in 2020 for the big bailout. It's going to be a new political world when this is all over.
Now, George, the UK seems to have been slow to respond to this outbreak. Why was the government's response so slow to this, given that for the time being, you guys are still a part of the EU, and just a short flight away is Italy and Spain, who have seen some huge numbers? Why did the UK respond so slow?
Well, actually, everyone responded too slow. China gave everyone a window of 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and nobody used it particularly well. And even when Italy did, the people were slow to respond, and the death toll has been simply enormous, as it has been in Spain, which likewise wasted a lot of time. France wasted time. And, of course, Britain wasted a lot of time. We were at least 2 weeks late in ordering this lockdown, this shutdown, this distancing in a meaningful way. Having said all of that, though, Manila, the British death toll fell yesterday by 50%. That's not a small thing, and that's before the impact, presumably, of the intensification of lockdown and distancing. So it could be a very tentative, could be that the things that have now been done are beginning to work. Let's hope so.
I hope so, George, for everybody's sake. Let's move over to your friend Julian's case. The magistrate has rejected Julian's plea for bail. On what grounds do you think that decision was passed?
Well, this is only my view. Of course, it's not RT America's or RT's corporate view in any way, but I think this is one of the most shameful decisions that has ever been made by a British judge. Julian Assange is clearly a prisoner at fundamental risk because he has an underlying lung condition in the time of the coronavirus in a maximum security jail where a very large number of people have reported symptoms, where the first British prisoner in a prison died yesterday, and where hundreds of prison staff are reporting illness with symptoms that could very well be coronavirus infection. And yet this magistrate, a low level of court in Britain, has turned her face against the appeal for bail. She didn't even order that he could go to a slightly safer prison than the Belmarsh Guantanamo that he's currently incarcerated in. I'm utterly ashamed of it, and I hope we don't live to see the death of Julian Assange in a British prison, in which case I'm not sure we could ever look anyone in the face again.
And George, lastly, I mean, I'm sure you've heard the news that a number of non-violent inmates here in the U.S. are about to be released from their jails due to the spread of coronavirus. It seems like this idea is not applicable to Julian. Is that upsetting to you, being that you are friends with him and he is a high-risk person?
Exactly. And not only in the United States are they letting prisoners out of Rikers, they're letting prisoners out in Iran from the Evin prison because it's not safe for a prisoner and therefore not safe for the staff to be keeping all these prisoners unnecessarily locked up there in such a time as this. Julian Assange, I remind your viewers, is not even actually a prisoner. He is the subject of an extradition request. He's not been convicted of a crime. Right. He's being held in Belmarsh, untried, unconvicted of any crime. He served his 12-month sentence for skipping bail. So he actually shouldn't be behind bars anywhere at all. But they are determined to keep him in the most perilous conditions to please the United States. I think if Donald Trump could find a moment or two to study this matter, he'd order them to pull stumps and get out of this farrago, because it reflects so badly on both the United States and the British justice system. It would be better, you know, to forget all about this crazy, really crazy idea of putting on trial a man for being a publisher in 2020. Come on.
Yeah, and at the very least, George, this is a human rights issue. So hopefully we can move forward and we see some justice for Julian. So we'll leave it right there. George Galloway, as always, appreciate your insights.
Pleasure.